Hello, welcome back, Search Sean. This is, of course, another Chat with Sean episode, and really looking forward to this. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about this subject area, so we get into it. I'll do the intro to my great guest today, then we get into some cool topics. But obviously, to see I'm joined by Nick today, and he's one of the most well-known voices in the SEO job market. Obviously, the person behind SEOjobs.com. And, he spends his whole days looking at what companies are doing in terms of hiring, what skills they're prioritizing, how SEO jobs are evolving. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And cheers for joining me again, Nick, your second appearance on the channel.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. I'm really looking forward to chatting more.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, let's just go straight into it. Kind of what are you seeing in the job market currently in terms of is it improving? Is it slowing down? Is it pretty stable? Or no?
So I would say the headline is it's going in the right direction, meaning it's going up and to the right. I think the asterisk to that is 2025 as a whole was probably the worst year SEO employment has ever seen. I can't speak for you, but I saw far more people on LinkedIn announcing that they were made redundant than I was receiving new jobs through the site. But I think now we'll talk a little bit more about it, I'm sure. But I think as AI, LLM, and these tasks associated with it to optimize it are tied a little bit closer to SEO, or at least the individuals that previously were defined as SEO manager, that's part of the reason why it's coming back up.
Yeah, do you think last year it was just a case of there's a perfect storm between terrible economies across the world, and maybe some people getting a bit too quick on the AI hype training, but didn't really know what was involved in it, and not really knowing who needed to be involved in it and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And do you see that? Do you think it'll slow down this year in that sense of people losing their jobs? And obviously it's hard to tell, but yeah.
Yeah. So my thought is last year, I think everybody was freaking out a little bit and everybody was scared to make the wrong decision. And that led to indecision. Some leadership viewed this as an opportunity to get ahead, cut costs so that the P&L for 2025 could look really good. And as a consultant myself, I can tell you my Q1 and Q2 were ugly. The leads I got, the people that I was competing against were, price shopping down to the bottom. It just wasn't something that I compete on. And it was ugly. I wasn't winning much. There wasn't a whole lot of requests. And then we hit Q3 and it almost felt like it was the day off. And all of a sudden it changed. My theory behind that is I think in the second half of the year, that's kind of a moment where a lot of us take a step back and look at what are the goals or the commitments that we made for the, calendar year. And then some leaders are going, oh shit, I'm not making any progress on SEO and AI LLMs are still unknown. I have to probably spend this money or I'm going to lose this money. And I think for that reason, then there became a little bit more work available for, say, contractors, consultants, or, even agencies. But also they put off hiring, and 6 months in with SEO not dying, they kind of decided, okay, maybe we don't have to take this extreme stance and we can merge what we know works in SEO with kind of the unknown of AI and LLMs. And we'll just call that the next, GEO, AEO, or as I like to call it, LMAO.
Yeah. And it probably doesn't help as well, does it? When large companies that everyone knows, like Amazon, are going out there actively saying, we're going to, instead of giving 600,000 people a job, we're going to give it to AI. That plants a seed to other companies who probably, look at Amazon as a great example of a business and see why they're doing that,
Yeah. No, I think anytime you're a business owner, you salivate at the opportunity to reduce costs and make more money while hopefully retaining the quality or increasing the quality of your product or service. I think just a lot of people overreacted a little bit and they cut a little too deep, you know, and now in 2026 and beyond, I think they're going to eat a little bit of crow. I made some predictions in my SEO for Lunch newsletter about 2026, and that was one of them. It was simply, I think a lot of employers are kind of crawling back to hire some of the people they were quick to, let go. The only caveat to that, and I'm sure we'll talk about more, is they're probably going to hire them back for cheaper than what they had previously been paying. But it's a perfect mad scientist situation of so many variables, between, like you said, economics, just the economy as a whole, politics, and of course, just the unknown of digital marketing and where Google's even going with AIO and traffic dropping by half. Perfect storm.
Yeah, especially if like business owners are still fixated on traffic and unaware of the other things that come with it around visibility. If they just think, oh, well, like traffic isn't ever going to come back, why should I bother hiring in an SEO? But as I've discussed with other guests, like recently, the role of SEOs have become, I think, even more important. And actually, we're going to do a lot more work. So probably should be getting a pay rise and not a pay cut. But I understand why that might be. I guess so. Talking more specific about roles, which roles are like growing fastest right now? Is there like technical, content, digital PR, analytics, that kind of thing? And obviously, before I came on, I shared with you a article from LinkedIn. It came out today about jobs on the rise, and this is obviously in London, but it was just interesting. Like I said to you, like the top two jobs were AI engineer and head of AI. The other one, number 3, was strategic advisor. So interesting, but yeah, obviously top 2 AI focus. So yeah, what are you saying?
They kind of all three go hand in hand. You have to have people with the skill set to activate on it, and then you have to have somebody to help generate that strategy. But yeah, you nailed it. I mean, how things have changed is SEO is no longer technical or content. There's always been kind of this messy third role of link building and PR. But for the sake of this conversation, we're just going to call it technical PR content. And I would say technical SEO became a lot more critical, especially as more and more sources started kind of confirming that like schema markup was so critical for these LLMs to discover and process content, as well as just the standard SEO reasons. You can't be displayed in Google, let alone LLMs, if your content's not discovered. So I think technical kind of got a little bit of love there. And I think our industry as a whole really leaned more content strategy. And we have a much smaller subset of people like me who are just tech dorks. So I do think that we're going to see a little bit more resurgence on the technical side first and foremost. And then the content's going to, come full circle as well. The other thing I mentioned was like kind of the PR and link building. I feel like they got like a breath of fresh air because in a previous life, if we were running like a link building campaign or working with PR, we would look at a post or a coverage and look at it and basically say, is there a no follow link? Like, is it linked? What kind of anchor text is it? Is the page indexed? And like any of those were a no, then it was like, that's a big fail. We don't care. And now what the LLMs have done for us is it's no longer good versus bad. There's something all in between, because even if all of those are no's for being good for SEO, we know that the brand mentions and, the possibility of that source being cited provides value. Now we'll talk about attribution, I'm sure later, but that's where the biggest question mark is. But all that to be said, so PR and like link building, I think are going to be more in demand this year than anything else. Then it's going to be technical. And again, if it was me, I would flip those two, but first PR and linking, and then it's going to be technical. And then I think we're going to see content kind of come back around. And the reality with that is, nobody's surprised to hear this, is if we rate content on a scale of 0 to 10, somebody did a really good graph. I can't remember who it was, but it was like the pre-AI, like there was like this big, jump at say like a 4 out of 10. And then it kind of like dwindled back down. And what it's done is it's just kind of built the quality of content over like one notch. But what it's done is, instead of a bell curve, it's more like this is the quality, and then it like goes up, because that's people leveraging AI and LLMs to be more efficient and, continue to support the skill sets that they have. And I believe a lot of companies are going to eat that crow that I was kind of mentioning before, because they're pounding out, 100 blog posts a day, and they're going to realize that this LLM game is not the same as SEO. And we shouldn't be just like building topical authority.
Yeah, interesting. And like you say, it's a bit of a chicken egg situation, because obviously you need good content to be able to be seen. As you say, if people can't find you with them technical aspects, page speed, as we know, is like a critical thing, and it'll probably get even more important as agentic AI starts becoming integrated more and more into the situation. So, page speed, structured data, like the user journeys, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so you can't get found. It doesn't matter how good your content is, but you need good content. So are you seeing it like more companies are kind of wanting that full package? Like, back in the day, like digital marketing managers, or are there still specialist roles that are cropping up, like we said about AI manager, or, whatever.
Yeah, I would say that there's still kind of that core focus, like we were saying, more technical or content, but the label of GEO, AIO, LLM optimization is in nearly, if not every, job description. So I think right now it's kind of because we don't know anything, we're just going to put this responsibility on people that have kind of the SEO or content marketing title. What's really interesting is, despite the fact that you just told me one of the biggest roles is like AI manager and like, prompt builder, I'm not getting a ton of jobs that are exclusively like AI manager or, AEO manager. It's always SEO with AI or LLM optimization being kind of the tagged added on.
Interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see when, like, if things evolve, like AI mode becomes like perhaps a default, and it's all pretty much like AI search results, or how it'll be looked at. And yeah, I think SEO managers are going to have to, they're going to have their work cut out, basically, because I think a lot of responsibilities are going to fall onto their shoulders just because like the way it is, but it does require a lot more people involved.
Yes, and I can validate exactly what you were saying, or at least with my predictions in my post, because one of the things that I had suggested is I think we're going to weed out quite a bit of SEOs in this industry, because historically, I would say SEO was never easy, but you know what? You could still find success with checkbox SEO. And if you priced it right and had customer, support that was reasonable, like there was money to be made. And I refer to that as like easy money. Now, like you have to have this experience, you have to test, you have to measure, you have to build narratives. And this is not a skill set that you can easily offshore to India, for your deliverables, and then white label it back to your client and then profit. And I think for that reason, we're going to see a lot of agencies go under this year. That's kind of my spicy take, because I just think there's a lot of people that have smart people building like an SOP. and then they just kind of have cheap resources executing. And I just don't think that's going to move the needle, at least not enough to justify whatever they're charging. And then these individuals that we're talking about who, I'll kind of say in air quotes, like good SEOs, and people who are doing AI aren't going to be cheap. And companies aren't always built, to support paying, the top 10% of talent.
Yeah. In sense of like the salaries, are you seeing any change year on year?
Yeah. This would be, let's kind of riff for each other, because I think you might know the UK market a little bit better than me. But in the US, kind of from the data that I see, so anecdotally, not, hardcore, I would say it's down like 20%. Like I'm seeing SEO director roles and up, like it used to be the rock bottom would be a 6-figure salary. And now I'm seeing SEO director roles, especially at the agency level, being marked at 70K, 75, 80K. And again, I would say that that's kind of that 20% drop. And I'm kind of seeing it trickle down. And it's like these entry level jobs are now getting paid what I got paid in my first job like 15, 16 years ago. And I made 32 grand. And it's like, I'm seeing a lot of these. And I think that just speaks to the market. And I think where AI and LLMs kind of handicap themselves a little bit is they're killing the talent funnel. Meaning people aren't investing in junior resources because AI is effectively doing their job. But people should be, in my opinion, investing in these individuals, not because of the value they provide this moment today, but because of the value you need them to provide later on when they are the ones in charge of the strategy and they're guiding the AI, all of that. So Sean, what are you seeing on the other side of the pond?
Yeah, very, very similar picture. Obviously, I'm not looking for a job, but when I see like, when I have seen things, I do feel like what I've seen, it's shown a very similar picture, and I'm like shocked, because you think director, you think, oh, that should be a decent salary, and it isn't. And you're like, wow, okay. And like you say, that entry level jobs are like literally the same, like if not less than when I started. It's pretty crazy, and especially with the economy, like in the UK, it's like on its knees. It's like terrible. Pretty hard to get by, even if you're in a decent job, and especially now, like say SEO. So we're probably going to have to work harder than we've ever worked before. And this is what I think is interesting as well. Just going off what you were saying, is I feel like as well that some companies that perhaps have, I said this in other episodes as well, but some companies have had pretty much a good deal, let's say, the last few years, because their paid teams could kind of pay themselves out of trouble, let's say, and kind of hide the skeletons on the internet away because they could pay their way through it. I don't think they're going to be able to do that as easy now with large language models and AI systems. So I think they're going to have to work harder as well. I understand why people would sell AI systems and automate things and stuff, but I still think at this point, it's still worth having, you got to have a human in the loop, if you're checking content or you're checking technical issues and stuff.
I think one thing, Sean, that I was saying, it's a hot take that I'm starting to kind of say more often, I suspect you would agree, is SEOs, myself included, we almost did our industry a disservice. And what I mean by that is SEO has always existed in this black box. Some leaders trusted more than other, but it really was just kind of like a gamble for them. And when I say we did a disservice is because when you have that very limited support, you also have limited resources. And some of us SEOs, like, we got results. And they're probably results that we didn't really earn because, we were manipulating the copy to be in a certain way, all the metadata, we're buying links. Like, these are all things that were all about getting performance right then and there. And leadership never really understood or saw what went into it to get those results. So now we're in a world where AI and LLMs are a part of the picture. The ecosystem is not surrounding just Google anymore. So we are measuring less. They know absolute certainty that their traffic is down. And where we are stuck as SEOs is now we're coming to them and saying, yep, you're probably never going to have your traffic come back to that previous level ever again. And, this other thing, ChatGPT and AI mode, yeah, they're not always sending referral clicks. And if they are, they're not tagging it correctly. So, and then we got cookies, and we kind of get back into that black box. Like we're making it even bigger and we're asking people to continue to invest because leaders, rightfully so, think if I'm getting half the value from SEO that I used to get, shouldn't I invest half the amount of money? And we're in a world where we have leaders that kind of got SEO before, but most didn't. And now we have to train them to kind of understand and buy into this new world, which again is a lot less gameable. Now, I did a podcast with Ross Hudgens to talk about like top lists that we, because you can kind of game that right now for best whatever. But I think those are going to be short-lived. And the cruel reality is SEO used to be a reflection of like kind of creativity and, hacking, if you will. Now, I think organic visibility is a reflection of your business. So like if your business has a good product, your business has a good service, your business has great customer service, that is then reflected in the Reddits of the world, the social media. Your brand, is viewed as positive. And then I think because of all that, you become visible in Google, these LLMs, and it just really makes the barrier to entry so much harder. And it's gross, but I feel very confident that for the first time in my career, I can say that SEO is not an option for everybody, like, nor should it be. Here's your thoughts, Sean. That's kind of a lot, I know.
I mean, you made valid points. I've said this before, like we haven't helped ourselves in the last few years and we put such a heavy focus on when we do reports about traffic growth and that kind of thing. And not as much, and this obviously is very like a blanket statement because I'm sure people did, but not enough concentration on like the bottom line and how we're contributing to that. But I do think like if you're lucky enough to keep a job or to get a job in SEO right now, I do think it's like the best time, like since I've like for many years, to reshape how you're seen in the organization and become the pivotal voice of teaching people about these new ways of thinking, mindsets and AI, and being the go-to person for AI search and everything AI really, and educating them that, okay, yeah, traffic will drop and it will never come back. However, we're still playing a very instrumental role in the branding and putting the products and services out there and people finding that information just through different ways, and you can get involved in that. It'd be interesting to see if you've seen things that come up in job descriptions around getting involved in like YouTube and Reddit and Wikipedia maybe and stuff like that. Sean here, look, if you've done any link building recently, like I have, you'll know that it's not easy to do. And there's a lot of communications, a lot of things you've got to look at and research. And getting the links one thing, but actually determining which sites to target and to reach out to is a whole different thing that you've got to do. And it's a lot of effort. And we know now it's a very important part of it. So, to do this, I've been playing around with a tool called Link Finder. And to be honest, I've just been mainly using it as a research tool because it's so detailed and really helping me come to those decisions. So it has a massive amount of data, pulls in data via API from 30 plus different link marketplaces. So you can see it all in one place, which sites exist, how they perform, very detailed about how they're performing, and prices and information is updated regularly. So always up to date stuff, which is, really important. As you can see here, you can also export it all, which is also very important. And it helps you kind of dig into the data even more. And, what stood out to me during testing it out was the really detailed filtering system. You can really narrow it down by so many different things like traffic value, top 3 keywords, which sites actually run ads on it, which I think is a really, really cool feature and definitely helps you when you're looking for the best possible sites. And obviously the core SEO metrics, which, you would expect. And it just makes it really easy to spot which sites and publishers are worth reaching out to and spending your time on versus those low quality sites, which obviously we want to ignore when we're doing our outreach. As always, like I say, it's not about chasing links for the sake of it, especially these days, as we know. It's always quality over quantity, and relevance matters so much more than volume these days. Saying all this, I'm really happy to say that Link Finder have offered all subscribers and obviously people watching this a special offer. You can get 30% off your first month by putting in a search with Sean at checkout. They do offer a free trial as well if you just want to explore it for a bit. But if you want to continue that, like I say, go to checkout, put in search with Sean, and that would get you 30% off your first month with Link Finder.
So I think that's the direction things are starting to go. I don't think people who are creating the job descriptions necessarily know that yet, because we are kind of figuring that out. But 2 things based off of what you kind of said. I have been joking with some buddies lately about SEOs finally being welcomed at the grown-up table, because that's what it kind of felt like. I think every single one of us at some point in time in our career truly felt like there's the business we're working for, and then here's the island where Nick lives. Sean lives on this one, but we don't talk, we don't get any love. And yet again, we already talked about, we kind of did a disservice because, we carved a canoe out of a tree and it got to the land, whatever it be. But that is one of the best parts is I think we're at the point where having individuals with our skill set not be a part of the conversation is just not an option anymore, because SEO is no longer simply a channel that we drop down in GA4 and then, like you said, sessions, revenue, conversions. Because if we stick to just those hard KPIs, there's going to be a lot of businesses that can't build a narrative to support a positive return. And this kind of brings up another thing that I had talked about before, is really questioning if we have always been measuring SEO properly. And what I mean by that is, if you asked me this time last year, and definitely all the years before, I would tell you I'm a performance marketer year in, year out. Nothing but revenue matters. Like, I was the king of saying that. But now, like, between all the touches that a user has with your site, outside your site, on social, very little of that is reflected in the organic channel. And the reality is, organic is much more like PR, radio, TV to an extent, because it's building that awareness. And then people make a second step or a third step. And that is when it's commercially viable. Meaning, if we are found in ChatGPT and they're like, Sean is the best guy to talk to about being on a podcast. But then they're going to go to Google and type your name. They're going to click on it, and then hopefully they'll send you a note. But if you were to look at the narrative behind analytics, what that says is somebody came in through my homepage. They already knew who I was, and that is the value. So that's why I'm kind of questioning, is there a world where SEO no longer fits within performance marketing? Because we've always been the stepchild of like paid ads. And we've basically done everything in our reporting minus like a ROAS, a return on ad spend, for those folks that don't know. So should we be using softer KPIs like PR? I don't know if you guys have ever seen one of those reports, but they talk about eyeball impression and, total size of audience captured. It's a lot softer. But at the same time, I think one of our biggest assets historically was being able to sell SEO because it was allocate 2% of your paid search budget to SEO. And it's pretty hard to not get a positive return. But can we honestly throw 2% into brand where now all of a sudden we don't have this like success or fail bar, your ROAS, because it's not performance marketing. And I apologize, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but for some reason, our leaders are perfectly okay with spending, millions of dollars with PR and TV ads and radio that have directional KPIs, but they're not with SEO. So what happens if SEO turns into a brand lever? And then anything off brand or non-branded is kind of just like bonus.
No, I love that. I really agree with that. And something I've been saying recently as well, because, when I was working for a company before, I was doing the SEO, doing actually everything paid and a lot of it. But we did a lot of sort of London Underground train advertising. We did billboard advertising, that kind of thing. And like you say, it's really hard to quantify, like, unless you really put a QR code on it, or, you could put your website address, but like you say, you can't 100% tell how many people looked at that and then acted on it. You can tell by footfall and, predicted footfall numbers and stuff. So yeah, but it doesn't mean it wasn't effective. Like I've been saying, like with many things, with marketing generally, it always has been the case. You do need all these different areas that people are going to see you, and then it all helps the final picture, but the pieces all come together and give you the final picture. So I think we're just another part of that puzzle. But yeah, measuring it like, say, like we pay, like in an equivalent of paid, I think it's going to be obviously a lot harder to justify. But also, I think it is doing us a disjustice because, like, say we do get heavily more involved in things like YouTube and social and helping out with the comms team or all these other things we're going to have to get more involved in. Like that isn't going to be shown as much in our final numbers, but it doesn't mean we're not having a major effect on how the brand is getting seen and discovered. So, again, we sell ourselves short, and I think we've got to stop doing that. And like I said before, this is the perfect time to stop that and redesign our roles and what we, cover, really.
Yeah. I love that you said that because it touches on a different article that I wrote about basically leaders are not rewarding for collaboration. And it's exactly what you had said. When we historically viewed YouTube videos, we've all been asked by our clients before, like, okay, does a YouTube video help make this page stronger for my SEO? And the answer is like, no, but also it's great if it's fantastic new content and people like it. It could have links, but the act of just having a video on the page wasn't a valid SEO technique. Now, in reality, if you are doing that and you're getting visibility on the YouTube, which they say is like the number 2 search engine, like we don't get credit for that. Like that doesn't come up in organic search with a referral of YouTube. It's just like referral social YouTube. And leaders right now define all of our roles by channel. And what that does is it handicaps the ability for our teams to get the most out of one effort, because we might collaborate some because we genuinely want the business to do well, but we're not given like the opportunity to collaborate to the full extent, because in the back of our mind, we're basically keeping tallies of what am I doing and how much of that impacts, what's going to be my annual bonus or my raise.
Yeah. And if anything, leaders should be really encouraging collaboration. It's especially the paid teams. There's so many opportunities where the organic teams can work with the paid teams to improve visibility on the search results, but also reduce costs, which is obviously the ultimate aim. But like you say, it does kind of feel sometimes that you're fighting against each other and for that attention and that budget. But if you're all looking at it from the same,
Lens.
the same lens, and you're going to be benefiting from a company. But a lot of the time that needs to come from up the top to give people that they feel freedom to do that. In terms of what companies are hiring the most that you're seeing in terms of agencies, in-house, your money, your life brands, what are you seeing?
I think by default, agencies are hiring more, but I think that's more representative of how many agencies there are for almost how many businesses are investing in it internally. I will tell you that the salary numbers for in-house are still healthy. They're down a little bit, but it's been kind of the world's worst secret that some of the best SEOs are the ones that are just kind of buried, within an in-house team. And, agency, you kind of use it to, get your chops wet. So I'm going to say agency roles first and then kind of in-house. And I would say the biggest want is basically senior level work, but at the junior level price. Because years before, I'd get emails all the time. I get job postings, and what they wanted was this magical unicorn. 2 to 3 years of SEO experience. I don't want to pay them more than 70 grand, and we got to be in the office 4 days a week. And I get what they're looking for. They don't want to start with somebody from scratch. If you can learn some of those best practices, then we can level you up even quicker. So it's worth paying a little bit more than, say, a junior, come right out of college. But now people are looking at it as I can only have limited headcount. So I want the director level, but the market sucks. So we're going to pay you, that mid-level.
Yeah, interesting. And are you seeing hybrid still around, or people wanting more office time?
Yeah, so I just actually built out a new section within SEO jobs because, probably to no surprise anyone, remote jobs do exceptionally well. I very rarely, if ever, have had someone post a job that's remote where they're not getting candidates that are at least qualified. Now, when it comes to the in-office, we're going from your candidate pool being around the world to whatever state, country, wherever you are. So it's always been a lot more difficult to support that. And to your point, we are, whether we like it or not, everything's going back to the office. Nobody's deciding right now to go full remote. Hybrid is almost the new normal. So I would just say with that, that's the one thing that's kind of a bummer is in a remote world where most of us, if not all of us, were remote. I think part of the reason the salaries were so high is because the talent was available. And then now as people are going back into office, either they need to, make sure that they're going to relocate, or, they're just kind of fishing in the small pond that's right in your area.
Is there any sectors or industries that are hiring more than others, if you see?
Like I said, it's agency heavy is what I'm seeing, but even for in-house, I would say the SaaS companies are, hiring. And I think a lot of that is you always hear kind of anecdotally that the referral traffic that we can track from say ChatGPT, because they tag their clicks, convert incredibly high. So I think we're going to see a lot more of these companies that are selling products or services to more tech focused consumers. That's kind of where the positions are first and foremost. And then I will just say that there's just a lot of in-house companies where it's just kind of legacy, like, we need to have an SEO team. And it's like they don't really think about it as like how they're evolving. It's just like, we need the SEO people. So we're going to backfill this or add to it.
Yeah. Fair dues. I was going to say this as well. Obviously, like we kind of touched upon it, but yeah, in terms of like GEO, AI visibility, search everywhere. Shout out to Ashley and Adele on that one. Those sort of roles you see in them, but not that much. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's the problem is everyone wants to say SEO is done, but only a certain amount of people want to do more than dip their toes into the water on LLMs. Yeah, and it's like for the same reason they are worried about investing too much money in SEO if it's dying. They're also a little bit terrified that AI optimization or whatever we want to call it, maybe that's not going to work. So they kind of want the best of both worlds. And I think what that leads to is a lot of inaction, which kind of takes us full circle to where we had started with Q1 and Q2 of last year was just crazy. Like, I don't know how to explain it. And I think it led to just a lot of inaction, which arguably is like the worst thing, worse than making a mistake, or it's worse taking a gamble winning.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Because SEO never used to get that much press. Like, let's be honest. Like, but now, like, if you read top newspapers and websites, it's talking about AI overviews and AI mode and Google this and OpenAI that. And so, these executives and leaders are kind of like the ones who aren't deep in the weeds, but they're reading the headlines. They're seeing mixed messages between traffic's going versus the AI bubble's going to burst. It's like
the narrative is very strong for the idea of like, at minimum, SEO is not as valuable as it once was. And then business people, marketers like us, we like to think, okay, if something's going away, then what is missing has to be allocated somewhere else. And AI and LLMs, you can't measure the same as SEO. And I think a lot of people are struggling. Like they're trying to do ranking reports off of prompts. And the reality is, especially Sean, with the distance between you and me, we could probably do the exact same prompt. And I would be shocked if your answer is the same as mine. So rank trafficking is not the way to be able to do this. And we talked about how referral clicks is not the way to do it exclusively. And we're even hearing early signs from ChatGPT that they're thinking about just continuing to give absolute minimum visibility into what's going to be their paid ads. So it's that black box. Like, I think that's why the one thing that I know more than ever is we need to continue to effectively communicate what we're learning and the state of the state. And I think it's okay to raise your hand and say, we don't know everything. Here is what we've gotten. Here are the sources that we have. They took in consideration that article, Mr. CEO, you had done, and Mrs. President, you sent to me too. And that is helping us build a takeaway. But I do think, to your point, SEO is being scrutinized a little bit more because we are at the big kid table.
Yeah, you definitely, I like that table example because definitely feels like that. And yeah, definitely I got sent lots of when things keep coming out, especially ChatGPT releasing their health section that they've now got, and obviously working in that sector, people kind of telling me, oh, what is this going to mean? But yeah, so it does mean we're going to be more involved in the conversation, but also we need to put out some fires and calm people down that don't really know how it's actually going to affect us and stuff. I mean, we don't know 100%. Probably got a lot better idea than than those not working in it. So what kind of skills are you seeing that people are asking for most? Like, are they kind of asking for like a jack of all trades, or like, are they obviously including AI a lot more, but what other kind of skills?
In my opinion, what people are asking for isn't what they need. And it's part of that broader conversation of coming to the adult table. So people are kind of, I would say, like mix and mashing all these descriptions that used to fit exclusively into content, technical, PR, and let's just even put like paid media as a fourth one. And now it's kind of this job that is SEO, social, manager. And it's like this kind of take everything that you would see, kind of jam it together. And then like you kind of put on top, like, on trend with LLM, performance. And I think, again, I don't think that's anybody trying to be like, let's try to get someone to do 3 jobs. Like there's always going to be some of those companies, but I don't think that's what they're trying to do. I think that is the grown-ups at the table just recognizing that there's a shift and we don't know exactly what it is yet, but we know that we have to account for all of this. And like I said, I'm starting to just see the difference between 5 jobs is very likely how much experience you have and where you're located. Like those are the big like qualifiers. Now, I touched on it a little bit earlier. It's not that these hard skills aren't important, but I've always told people that I feel like I could take somebody that knows nothing about SEO, but is a good, effective communicator, and I can teach them everything that I know in my 15-year career in a couple of years. Like I can make them an SEO rock star that way. What I can't do is I can't sit down and explain to somebody how you come up with analogies, when you're having conversations with leaders that they'll relate to and that they understand. We can't have junior people going into these big meetings, like saying things, if you're using canonical tags and no index and robots and crawl budget, like you've already lost the C-suite. Like there's nothing you can say at that point. Like you've been lumped into like, you're the IT dork. Like you want money? No. Like, whereas if we come in and we're just talking about money, visibility, business share of voice, like now you're talking their language and they're much more interested in understanding what you think, what you see as a lever. And I think that is the skill set that we really need to push, because I think SEO historically has been kind of one step past like development. You have your developers and we've all worked with them. They all kind of have that same personality for the most part. And we know they tend to be a little bit more dry. They tend to be a little bit more reserved, and they certainly don't want to be in calls or meetings. And I think SEO kind of fell into that kind of by default. And I think it kind of goes into that analogy that we were talking about with islands. We were just disconnected. But now, I can't say it anymore. Now that we have a plate at the big kid table, like we have to be able to talk. When people ask you questions, you have to communicate. And more importantly, you have to be able to communicate value. And these are the soft skills that we are not seeing in junior resources. And I think it's a combination of COVID kept us all in-house and away from people, so you're not communicating. But also, I'm bad with my phone, but my kids are even worse. So this new generation, it feels like the unicorn is somebody that can show up, make eye contact, and talk to you confidently about something they know. And then, like I said, if I could get those people, I'll teach them SEO. Like, I'm not worried about SEO being too hard for them because they already have the skills that matter most.
Yeah, great points. And do you think automation and those kind of more technical things are going to help you get a job, or is it worth learning and practicing that sort of stuff, or do you think people aren't really looking at that?
Yeah, I do think the technical aspect is more important now than it ever has been before. But where I'd be interested is like, as long as SEO continues to stay in that performance marketing bucket, like creativity is going to be a huge aspect. We always talk about we can't do checkbox SEO, or checkbox SEO is kind of table stakes. But who is curious enough to come up with an idea that they can vibe code an MVP and go show the president of your company, what she should be investing in, because now she has something that she can click and move around. Whereas before we would go and just be like, we have this idea and it's gonna be $100,000 because we need a developer. So yes, technical skills, obviously content's important, but just genuinely like people need to be more savvy about how to grow a business. Cause I think that's where SEO and AI is. It's a reflection of the current state of your business.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's easy to put together an audit and listen what things need to be done and prioritize them. Selling it, on the other hand, is a whole different kettle of fish. And, it takes a lot of, like, I've been in this sector for a long time, and it's still to this day, I'm learning how to do that effectively. And like you say, I think definitely the younger generations are going to have to learn to do that just as much.
John, I'll tell you just a quick story, and then I want to give it back to you. But I no longer work with this company. People probably won't be too surprised. But I had the CEO on the phone, like we were talking or we're on a call, and he was just adamant. He was like, I've always ranked for this keyword since forever. Like, we should be ranking for it. And instead of having the debate and all this, what I did is I just asked him if he had a couple extra minutes. He and we pulled up the search results. I put in the keyword, and then he was number 3. The first 2 were Mayo Clinic and like Johns Hopkins. And I told him, I said, you will never be number 1 or 2 ever again as long as these are being prioritized. And then like we looked at a different query. So he didn't like that, but it kind of made sense. This next one is what drove him nuts. He's like, fine. Like, if I can't rank for that keyword ever again because of your voodoo, like, fine. But how about this product? This product I used to rank for all day. We're talking 10 years. I made millions off of it. Like, that's my keyword. So we typed that in. And this is where it got a little bit ugly, because I found his listing. He was like 6. And then there was like 4 of his competitors above, and then just some random, we know how that is, like something weird in the SERP that they're testing. And just told him to look at it. And his product was more expensive, had higher shipping, and a restocking fee if you returned it. Everybody above him was cheaper, free shipping, free returns. And I just asked him, because I didn't want to make this emotional, like this needed to be data. And I was just like, why should Google put you above these guys? Like, this is a better deal, a better experience for the user. Do you agree? And he just kind of was disgruntled and was like, well, we need to do it. Yeah. But I think that's where the logic is coming into search. Whereas before, what we would say is, yep, we're going to like 10x our internal links. I'm going to go and change the title tag, and, kind of under the tail, we're going to buy, 3 links from Forbes, and that's how we would increase rank. Whereas now I think fundamentally, if your business is flawed or your service is not as good, there's going to be a ceiling on where your visibility can be. And like I said, there's a lot more conversations with that client, but it was a really, really good experience and activity for me to go through, because it's a very uncomfortable conversation, and trying to lead it with more data and the experience. because I feel like that's just trying to open up the black box. Like we still don't quite get it, but the box is getting a little bigger at least.
It's a great example. I've been there myself, so I can definitely, resonate with that. But this is a good one in terms of like, you've got a job in SEO, but you want to move up to like leadership. How can you go from just being good at SEO and being a good SEO manager or whatever to like going up and moving up the ladder? Because that seems to be, like you say, it might be easy now we're at the table as such, but maybe that wasn't the case before. But yeah, how do you progress?
Yeah, I think it's still going to be the same thing that we've just been kind of harping on. I think the difference between someone who is an independent contributor and can still be a rock star at their job and a leader who needs to give direction to individual contributors really is like effective communication, because you need to, message and advocate up, and you need to message and advocate down. And that individual, if you're too strong technical, you're not going to be able to communicate appropriately. At the same time, if you're not technical enough, nobody as an independent contributor wants to listen to what you have to say, regardless how accurate it is, because they think, what does he know? Like, it's like me telling somebody how to do paid ads. Like, I can tell them what the ROAS should be and that they should test ad copy, but somebody should point out and be like, Nick, you haven't made a profitable campaign ever. And I'd be like, yep, touche.
And that's what I was going to say. This is the problem when you start getting older. Your memories come back to you 5 minutes later. But I was going to say that, communication, is going to be so vital now as a tool to use, because we're going to have to communicate with all different stakeholders now. So if you're working in SEO and you can't communicate efficiently, you're going to be found out, because like before, we could just lock ourselves away a little bit and work in our silo, work on the SEO stuff we have, send a few emails out, have a few discussions with the developer maybe or whatever. But now you really have to go and talk to the comms team, the PR team, the social media team, the paid team, all those sort of other teams as well, along with the executive suite or whatever. So, like you say before, it might make a few uncomfortable going forward, but I don't think you're going to get away with just sitting in a room on your own anymore.
Basically, either. And I think that is also, I don't have kids, but it's like with my children, like I'm forcing them to talk. And what I mean by that is most of these children, when you go to like a restaurant, like the parents are ordering for a 10-year-old kid. So like when I am bringing my kids to say Chipotle, like I make them engage with people, like not only to make sure that they have manners, but talk. Like, I don't even care if you're effective at this point. Starting point is communicating, active dialogue. And the reason that I do that is because my hope is when they continue to go to school and they join the job market, I strongly believe that communication is what's going to set them apart, because everybody's going to have the degree. Everybody's going to have the skill set. So what? It's going to come down to your GPA, and did you effectively communicate and represent yourself well in an interview?
Yeah, if everyone's got tools like AI tools to their, everyone's going to have it on their phone. Like, you can imagine how good ChatGPT is going to be when, my kids that are 7 years old, if they get to like 15, 16, how good AI is going to be. If there is any jobs, then, like you say, the communication is going to be, like you, I kind of make mine when I'm in Tesco or something in the supermarket, go and ask for a bag or whatever. Because, like you say, it's otherwise it's just not going to learn those skills. The last one, because I think it's vital about what we're saying here, is how important is it to build that personal brand, a website, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever. How important do you think that's going to be going forward?
I think it's incredibly important, more important now than it ever has been in the past. I've always been a huge advocate of people owning like their .com, like assuming that you're not, Ben Affleck most of us can register our domain. And I did this when I was leading teams. I did it with interns. I did it with juniors. And I was like, I only want you to do this for like 2 reasons. One, it's nice to know like how a site goes from selecting a domain to, here's my website. But 2, it's like, try stuff, test it, break it, like try to rank for your name. And we as search professionals, I realized that we can use a lot of examples to show like our success, but it feels like you're starting behind the starting line. If you try to Google me and nothing shows up, and then I'm going to come on your podcast and talk about how people should prioritize SEO and effective communication, but Nick can't get found anywhere. Like the credibility aspect to it. And the reality is, we start at the beginning of the show. If jobs are going to be at a premium, what are you going to do to stand out? And Sean, I'll tell you this because I'm pissing off a lot of people and I really don't have a problem with this. People reach out to me asking like for job advice or if they want to like go freelancing. And the first question I ask them every single time is like, why you? Like, what makes you special? And 98% of the time, people answer with years of experience. And I had one person, she told me, I have 18 years of SEO experience. And I told her, you know what I just heard? That I'm going to have to pay you a lot more for this position than somebody else I just talked to that has 3 years. And she was quite upset. But I think the reality is there wasn't a side project. There wasn't, a newsletter. There wasn't a YouTube. There wasn't a website. There isn't a Twitter, whatever you be. And I think those are the things that help us stand out. Again, in a world where SEO is like, if you called yourself an SEO, there was a job for you. But that's not the case anymore. And I think that's where the personal branding helps just give you that edge in a world where everything else is the same. Similar to what we talked about with kids and be able to effectively communicate.
Yeah, I've had some good chats on here recently with, like, for example, Jason Barnard around personal branding. Not only is it just important, like all the stuff you said, but also like with the world of AI, people are going to be able to find out a lot more information about you. You want to make sure it's the good stuff they're finding, rather than anything else. But also, like with this channel, for example, like my partner always has a go at me because he's like, I'm not going to swear, but why the hell are you spending so much time and money on this? Like, what the hell are you getting from it? You're not making any money. And I'm like, look, it's more than money. Like, one, I've become better at communicating. I've still got a long way to go, as you could probably tell, but I was quite introvert, and now I feel like I could talk to anyone. And now, I've built a network of people. Mm-hmm. I've built a website. I've built this kind of some presence in the community. Good or bad, I don't know, but I've built a presence. I'm feeling and it's I'm talking to Brighton SEO in April. All these opportunities that I wouldn't have got if I didn't put my name out there and put the effort in. So it's so much more than just, subscribers or whatever. It's building traits like confidence and communication and stuff and skills like that, but also like you're building network. And if someone does search for you, like hopefully it'll be a lot more. If you're going for a job and it's 50-50, you're going to stand a lot better chance being picked for that job versus someone who hasn't done what I've done or similar to me,
Yeah. So I have a couple of points just to further support all of that, and again, I've been by myself solo for the last 5 years, but when I used to have a team, I would tell people all the time, you don't have to speak at MozCon to, build your name. In fact, I wrote a post for SEO Jobs that basically says, this is where I draw the line is like podcasts and webinars. I don't like public speaking personally. It takes so much time to prepare for it. And half the time I don't have any capabilities to take on more work anyways. So be creative, do something. And I will also say that the money is great when it works, but I wrote the SEO for Lunch newsletter for like 4 years, every single week religiously, before I made a penny on it. But what I did do is I built a lot of people in my network that if they had questions, because at the time I was like one of two, aggregator type posts. So they'd be like, "Hey, Nick, what do you know about, this, and that?" And then I'd be like, "Great, it's coming out in the next newsletter." Yep. So you kind of indirectly, build that up. But the other thing, and this kind of wraps it up, and I get flack for this, and I don't know if I feel bad or not, but I think SEO, especially now with like LLMs, AI, because there's so much that we don't know, I think that everyone who is in a role has to have some level of passion. Otherwise, you're not going to find success in our industry. And I don't mean to encourage hustle culture. I'm not trying to say don't have work-life balance. But if you're not curious, and if you are thinking something and you want to validate it, but you're not going to do it simply because you're at home, I just think things are going to move way too quickly, and you are constraining yourself to 40 hours in your desk where your boss is probably already giving you 50 hours worth of work. And that goes to where's your brand show up? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, I did a post about that. Just, I think this is the year. If you've got any little thing you want to try out, could be anything, like I say, it hasn't got to be a YouTube channel or whatever. Just any sort of little project you want to do to make yourself stand out. This is the year that you have to do it. Yeah,
John,
for
you'll
sure.
agree with this. When I was interviewing for jobs, the one thing that I like to kind of lead with, because I knew it would make me stand out, is like, I think, what was it? There was an affiliate site that I had built, but it was like, shit, what was it? It was like portable toilets or something like that. And I quickly like abandoned it because I realized that I'd have to have inventory, but I was able to communicate like why it failed and what it was and what I learned. And that made me stand out. And it's not because I went in there and said, "Look, I have 8 million subscribers and, I am top, YouTuber." Like, everybody wants to be that. That's gloating. It takes somebody with confidence to be able to go in and be like, "This is what I tried. It was an epic fail, but here's what I learned from it so that I never do that with clients or any of my other projects." And I remember now, it's heated toilet seats. That's what my site was about. I thought I could be an affiliate, and then I learned that I would have had to actually have inventory. And so that kind of crushed that dream.
If you ever do get it, I'll have one. But no, I appreciate your time as usual. It's been awesome, learned a lot. So I really appreciate your time, Nick. And yeah, hopefully you join us again, maybe in a few months, see if things have progressed even further. Who knows? But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I always appreciate chatting with you.